Coming up, it's a brave YouTube presenter who mentions the phrase cognitive dissonance at the very beginning of a video. But try as I might, there's no better description of the plight of the poor Brexit supporter, faced with overwhelming evidence that Brexit has been a failure, yet remaining an ardent cult member. In this video, I'll explain why I feel a bit sorry for these people. Stay tuned. Brexit has indeed been a failure. That's not an opinion anymore, it's just counting. The damage done to the British economy, to Britain's trade intensity, Britain's observable loss of importance on the international stage, the brain drain of our top technicians, doctors and scientists, its impact on small businesses that used to export to Europe, such as mine, that have now ceased trading. The failure of Brexit is stark and in your face. So the Brexit voter is suffering cognitive dissonance, defined as follows. Cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort experienced by a person who is confronted by new information that conflicts with existing beliefs. This discomfort forces them to try to resolve the contradiction in order to reduce their discomfort by either avoiding, rationalising, or altering their beliefs. In other words, your Brexit voter is now in a situation where they have three choices. The first is avoidance, going out of their way to avoid the subject, repressing any thoughts of their mistake. This is clearly not a healthy response, as it leaves them with recurring mental discomfort whenever they are impacted by Brexit. For example, when travelling abroad or ordering items from European suppliers, or indeed just being confronted with news of the latest Brexit consequence. This avoidance also takes the form of the whataboutism, so beloved by the right. The sort of comments on these videos like, never mind Britain, what about Germany? What about the EU? What about fill in the blank with the comparator country of your choice? Of course, the only meaningful comparator is between the UK out of the EU compared with a doppelganger UK representing what would have happened had we stayed in the EU. The answer to that is that we'd have an economy between 4 and 7% larger, with around 17% greater trade intensity. The truth is that during our EU membership, the UK economy was doing worse or better than no or all other member economies at a certain point in time. So post-Brexit comparisons with, for example, Germany are irrelevant and tell us nothing about the impact of Brexit on the UK, but tell us everything about the Brexitist mindset of avoidance. The second response of the die-hard Brexit cult member is rationalising their mistake. I often see this in the comments too. Apparently, Brexit could have been brilliant, but for one of the following reasons. It wasn't implemented properly. It wasn't the Brexit I'd voted for. I'm afraid it was, as it turns out. I wanted a different kind of Brexit. That wasn't the question you were asked in the advisory referendum, was it? I'm afraid. So on that basis, you still have to confront the fact that you made the wrong decision. The Remainers sabotaged it. It's a Remainer Brexit. I mean, where do you start with this one? A Remainers Brexit would have involved staying within the EU, the Customs Union, Erasmus, the Single Market, the European Medicines Agency, etc., etc. We needed a hard no-deal Brexit. Great, the Brexit we got was almost as hard a Brexit as possible, with a minimal trade deal. And it's demonstrably been a failure. But somehow, making it even harder and more minimalist would have been less of a failure? That is some cognitive dissonance right there. Then we have the multitude of conspiracy theorists leaving their little comments. There was a World Economic Forum plot to make sure it failed. It was a Remainer plot. It was an establishment stroke the blob stroke civil service stroke deep state plot. I've even had it's an American plot. Fill in the blank with your particular flavour of deluded rationalisation or conspiracy theory. The last refuge of the rationalisation strategy to relieve Brexit cognitive dissonance is, of course, to say that it was all worth it, all that pain was worthwhile for all the extra sovereignty we've got, that we're no longer in the evil clutches of the all-powerful, yet somehow at the same time failing, European Union. In fact, we had sovereignty before leaving the EU. In fact, the decision to leave the EU in itself proves we had sovereignty all the way along. The truth is, rather than taking back control, we already had it. We've now lost some of that control by having to comply with EU regulations in order to trade with the EU while losing our power to frame and veto EU laws thanks to Brexit. So all these attempted rationalisations are nonsense, of course, but they help ease the mental discomfort of the ardent Brexit supporter, at least temporarily. And then there's the third option to ease the Brexitists' cognitive dissonance, to alter their beliefs or attitudes. This is an option now chosen by 17% of Leave voters, according to recent polling by YouGov, with an additional 11% unsure of their decision. And psychologically, this is actually the bravest and hardest option to take. The human psyche finds it difficult to admit to mistakes because of the social pressure to appear competent and successful in our decision-making, reinforced by the desire to maintain our self-esteem and positive self-image. Acknowledging our errors can feel like a threat to one's self-identity. So, and I mean this sincerely, all respect to those 1 in 4 Leave voters who have since changed their mind or at least doubt their decision now. I know that they are amongst some of the most ardent supporters of this channel. Yet, a comment I often see from those Leave voters who haven't changed their minds yet is, I haven't changed my mind, and I have loads of friends who voted Leave and none of them have changed their mind either. Well, maybe that's true, and maybe it isn't, but the professional polling organisations have been confirming for some years now that there's been a huge mind shift in the British electorate. We're all familiar with the Brexit poll tracker by now, I'm sure, with that funny little blip around the date of the referendum when all the dark money was being spent on social media. And the latest opinion poll of 2,132 people last weekend confirms that a clear majority of the British public now believes that Brexit has been bad for the UK economy, has driven up prices in shops, and has hampered government attempts to control immigration. The most striking statistic, though, is that strikingly low numbers of people believe that Brexit has benefited them personally or the country. Just 1 in 10 believe leaving the EU has helped their personal financial situation. More than 1 in 3 says it's made it worse. The number one issue for UK voters right now is the Tory cost of living crisis. The opinion poll tells us that nearly 2/3 of voters see Brexit as a factor, with only 7% thinking that Brexit actually helped. The cognitive dissonance for that 7% must be unbearable. You almost feel sorry for them. The overall finding of the poll is that just 22% of those surveyed feel that Brexit has been good for the UK in general. I can feel a graph coming on. The blue lines here represent those people who think Brexit has been positive, and the red line those who think the effect has been negative in each of these areas. In every area, it's clear that Brexit has been a failure. The cost of living and the NHS are the two most important issues for the electorate right now, and it's those two factors that rank as having been impacted the worst by Brexit. We're told that Brexit won't be a direct issue at the next general election, but its indirect impact will be felt by the Tories through its negative consequences for the cost of living crisis, the NHS, and yes, immigration. The next general election will be all about the consequences of Brexit.